Welcome to Growth Hacking Show. I'm your host Muhammad Siddique from Atlanta, Georgia. And on this episode, we have a very special guest, the host of the Green Insider, Fred Davis. Please join me to give a warm welcome to our guest, Fred Davis. Fred, welcome.
Hey, appreciate you having me on, Mr. Siddique.
Thank you so much, Fred. Let's get started with this. Where were you? What happened? Who you were surrounded with that inspired you to get started with the Green Insider podcast?
The Green Insider was kind of a marriage of ideas with my business mentor, if you will, and kind of my boss, Mike Niemer, the president and founder of eRenewable. Basically, we're a green energy, clean energy startup company. Both of us come from the oil and gas background. Obviously, Mike's got 40 plus years. I've only got 6.5, almost 7 now. And I come from a media background. I did radio and sports podcasting before getting onto the renewable side of things. And we were looking at a new way to kind of market our company and something different. And as you know, Mr. Siddique, podcasting, when done correctly, can open up an avenue that a lot of folks I don't think are typically used to. And it's just a different way of getting out. It's another form of marketing. Listen, you know as well as anybody, marketing comes in different shapes and sizes, and podcasting is just one way to do it. I think the key, though, as you know, is consistency and quality. Those are the two things that we try to bring with the Green Insider week in and week out.
Wonderful consistency and quality. And I agree 100% on both. And let's hopefully this episode, the people who are watching this, they will enjoy the
quality. Hope so.
So, Fred, I'm going to ask you because your media, over the decade experience in media. So what are the top 3 mistakes people do when they do a podcast in the wrong way and then they don't get it, the results of what they intended to results?
Ooh, the top 3 mistakes. If I'm being honest here, one of them, I think the first one is identifying whether you're any good or not. Not everybody's meant to be a podcaster. That's the reality of it. Listen, okay. Remember 20 years ago when obviously the internet blew up and everybody thought, okay, I'm gonna start a blog, right? And so I come from a media background. I've got my journalism degree, which I think in the next 5 or 10 years may be extinct, but. Journalists were mad 20 years ago because it seemed like anybody with an internet connection and, Microsoft Word could be a blogger. Right. And so there was this mashing or this mishmashing of what's a journalist, what's a blogger. Right. Well, we're redoing it all over again in 2021 now. Right. So because anybody that's got a microphone and internet connection thinks they can be a podcaster. Right. So I guess the first one would be honest with what your expectations are. Be honest with what your realizations are. Be honest with what you're doing it for. Okay. I don't do my renewable energy podcast the same way I do my sports podcast. It's a different market. It's a different, we've got different expectations on what we're trying to reach. So that my first rule would be expectation. Be realistic with what your expectation is. I think number 2, and we already talked about it, is be consistent, right? Okay, it sounds great. You've done 2 or 3 episodes. You're feeling good about yourself. And then you fall off the map. You don't do another podcast for another month, or, you get redundant. You get tired in your in your content. That's probably number 2. And then number 3 would be just, and these kind of all, like I said, these kind of all go hand in hand with each other. But I think number 3 is probably don't get discouraged. All right. Because the reality is, and Mr. Siddique, you know this, did you have 1,000 listeners your first time you did a podcast?
I had a 0 listener when I started with this because
0
I was
listeners,
listening
right?
myself, so
Exactly, right? So you know as well as anybody, you've had to grind at this. You've had to keep going at this. And there were probably days where people probably said to you, why are you messing with this? What are you doing? Go get a real job, that sort of thing. Trust me, I've explained to people, what we're doing with our podcast, what we're doing with the Green Insider. And listen, you know as well as anybody, Muhammad, some people are going to get it. Some people won't, and that's just the reality. That's just the nature of it. And that's with any lot in life, right? So whether it's a podcasting, whether it's whether you're trying to run the best bakery stand, whatever, it doesn't matter. But don't get discouraged. So because I've had some episodes that I thought were really, really good, didn't get as many listeners as I would have liked. I've reached out to guests that I've reached out to time and time again. And the renewable space is getting crowded. I had a guy who connected me on LinkedIn was hey, let's do a podcast, and then the next day his company launches its own podcast. Well, then he falls off the map, right? So was he going to do a podcast with me anyway, or just decide, you know what, to heck with this guy? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't know. But all I know is that now they've got their own podcast, and that's all well and good. We actually ended up getting somebody else from the company to come join the podcast after all. So it all worked out. I think the key is be realistic with your expectations and the quality of what you're trying to do. Stay the course and don't get discouraged. I think those are the three biggest things. And then I guess for if you're going to give me a wild card here, it goes back to quality. Right? You have to have good quality. I don't want to listen to a podcast where it sounds like we're talking through a tin can. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it needs to sound good. All right. Because you know as well as anybody, Muhammad, there's I think I read something the other day. There's 850,000 podcasts right now. Okay. 850,000. That's a lot to sift through. So if Muhammad and Fred sound like crap, guess what? I'm going to go to, Billy Bob and Jose and see what theirs sounds like. And if they've got better quality, sorry, Muhammad and Fred, but you guys are out because you guys sound like, boo-boo. I'm going to go listen to Billy Bob and Jose. So that's probably that would be my advice to folks.
Wonderful. That's amazing. So I learned in this too. We all need a reminder for this. We need to keep on quality. We have to stay consistent on the quality,
Absolutely.
So Fred, in your green energy and renewable, you came from the oil background to move to that's a 180 angle shift in the green energy. So what are the top 3 success secrets of making a transformation from industry A to industry B?
I think number one, find good people to team up with. The story, what's funny about how me and Mike came together was I had reached out to him. Actually, we came together on Twitter. Okay, so I was watching a college football game, our alma mater, University of Kansas. Obviously, for anybody that knows anything about sports, knows we're a great basketball school, not so great when it comes to football. I was tweeting away about our football program, not happy about it. Mike and I both live in Houston. We're both Jayhawks. He reached out to me and said, he agreed. I reached out to him and said, hey, I see you and I are both from Kansas. You're in the oil and gas field. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit because I'm thinking about maybe making some different moves in the field. We met for coffee. He said, Fred, get into renewable energy, and I'm starting a new company. I'd like, I'm looking for a marketing guy. Maybe you and I can work together. And here we are 18 months later, and we've got this thing off the ground. So number one, I would say find somebody that you trust and find somebody that believes in you. That's the key. All right, because you need somebody that you can trust and believes in you, and that's that I can't stress that enough. Number two, don't pretend like you know everything, because you don't. I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, we're still new to this green energy. I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, a lot of folks are still learning the green energy side of clean energy, green energy, renewables, whatever you want to call it. Don't pretend like you know everything. Okay, and that's been a huge help for us. And number three. Again, I think it just goes back to what you talked about with the podcast is staying consistent. All right, is we haven't veered from the course. I mean, there's other companies that are kind of doing what we do. There's other podcasts out there that are kind of similar. We got reached out to within probably a couple months of doing our podcast. Brand new podcast. We had folks with 80,000 Twitter followers reaching out to us saying, hey, what are you guys doing with your podcast? And listen, if that just tells me that if I've got somebody with 80,000 followers on Twitter listen to my podcast, I'm doing something right. All right. Because they're saying, oh, well, the way you guys are going about doing your business. So that's the key is again, get with somebody you know, or get somebody with you trust. Don't pretend you know everything. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And number three is, again, stay consistent. Wash, rinse, repeat, and just do it over and over and over again until something breaks free. And then when it does break free, just add on to that.
Yeah. Understood. So let's talk about your podcast. I'm seeing your website is freddavismedia.com. Is that correct?
Well, Fred Davis Media is the web is my personal website where I do a lot of my sports that's predominantly where my sports and some of my pieces from my radio work here in Houston is. But as far as as far as the Green Insider podcast is, that's going to be erenew.net. www.erenew.net. That's the website you can go to. That's our company website. And like I said, I'm the director of marketing as well as content creator. And then, of course, obviously host of the Green Insider podcast.
Just to make sure, erenew.net?
erenew, ERENEW.net.
Okay, .net. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to display it on my screen too so people can see it.
Right on.
And okay, is that correct?
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Wonderful. So who is your ideal guest for your podcast for the Green Insider?
Who's my ideal guest? Right now, we deal primarily with executives, CEOs, C-suite level folks, thought leaders, disruptors. Anybody that's in the green space. I mean, I think so far through, we actually just put out an episode today. Today being Wednesday, with the CEO of a company called Energyware out of Florida. They're getting ready to move their headquarters here to Texas. But this is a gentleman that Mike, again, our CEO, our president and founder of Be Renewable, they knew each other for years and years and years. Because the one thing that that you're going to start to see a lot of is you're going to see a lot of folks migrate from the oil and gas space to the renewable space. Like it's already ongoing, but you're going to see a big push to that in the next 2 to 3 years. So like I said, we've got a brand new podcast that we just put out today. Like I said, CEO, this guy's been in the brokerage space for 25 years. Then he made the leap to the renewable space, right? We've had a handful of CEOs, company founders. We've had folks from the Environmental Defense Fund on. Actually, we just had the vice president of renewables from Mitsubishi Power America, which actually was rated in 2020 the #1 electrical storage company in America for 2020, right? And so we just had their VP on, which we're very, very excited about. So, and then we just had the CEO of CPS Energy, which is the largest municipally owned energy company in America, and they have the only Black female who's a CEO of a company in the entire energy business. So we have gone out of our way to try and be as diverse as possible. Men, women, blacks, whites, Hispanics, whatever. We've brought them all on to the show. And so that's one thing with what we've tried to do is we try to be diverse with who we bring on. And we just try to be, as we've said time and time again, we try to be educational. Because again, there's so much to the renewable space that people just don't know. There's things that we're still learning about it. And if we can let folks know about it and somebody can learn something, as we like to say, leave us a 5-star rating. Why? Because we promise you learn more about renewable energy when you stop by than before. Or after you stop. What's my line? You learn more about renewable energy after you listen to us than before you stop by. So there you go.
Yeah, wonderful. No, this is amazing. So if, the people who are watching this right now or maybe in recorded later, CEOs of any renewable energy and, like a founders, even a startup, they, go ahead and check it out, erenew.net.
Please do.
Connect with Fred. You see his energy. He's so much pumped up in energy level, So Fred, I like to ask this question to all of my guests about the Growth Hacking Show. You are the guest of Growth Hacking Show.
Yeah.
What would you say to your best friend about a Growth Hacking Show when I'm not there?
What would I say to my best friend about the Growth Hacking Show if Mr. Siddique wasn't there?
Yeah.
So that way I wouldn't try to coerce him into saying something nice because he felt obligated to say it because you were right there. I would say, you know what I'd say about Mr. Siddique? I would say my hat's off to this gentleman because one thing I appreciate about what you're doing, you reach out to hosts, which you don't see a lot of that in these, in this day and age. I mean, so I you're a man after my own heart. And you ask thoughtful questions. I mean, listen, hopefully somebody can take something away from this show today. And if nothing else, if they think I'm a psychopath, then hey, if that's what they took away from the show today, that's okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, psychopath. So, Fred, as we are about to wrap up, what would you say as a final word?
Listen, folks, I don't care what side of the aisle you fall on, whether you're in oil and gas, renewable energy, wherever you're at. Listen, it's 2021. We had an incredible 2020, good, bad, ugly, however you want to slice it. We've got a brand new administration in, and I implore everybody to learn about renewable energy. It's so much more than just wind and solar. It's more than just Tesla. I mean, listen, Tesla's doing great things. Make no mistake about it. And they've helped modernize and make renewable energy electric cars cool and mainstream again. But there's just so much more to it. There's the hydrogen factor. There's the storage aspect of it. There's the transmission. There's the technology. There's, how are we going to get to zero net carbon? How are we going to get to carbon neutrality? How is all this going to take place? There's a lot that needs to be done. What are microgrids? How can those help the grid? Why are we having rolling blackouts in California? There's so much that goes into it. And don't let what's going on in California be this idea that, okay, well, that's what's going to happen when we go to all renewable energy. There's so much to it. We please ask you, go to the Green Insider, learn more, because we've had folks touch on every single one of those, and we're going to do more of that in 2021 and beyond.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Fred Davis, for sharing your wisdom with us today. On the behalf of Growth Hacking Show and our entire team, we really appreciate you. This is Muhammad Siddique signing off from Atlanta, Georgia. All good wishes.